What is going on, guys? So today, the second episode of The Last of Us has come out. And what we are going to do is, I have a couple of notes here, gonna break it down. This time I'm not as sick, so that's the plus side. This episode was called Infected, and there was a lot that actually went into this. So first off, a couple of things from episode 1, because I did rewatch this. My girlfriend had not seen it yet, so I decided, you know what? Let's watch the first one, and then right when the second one airs, we'll watch that. She gets the full gist of it. It's not really her vibe of a show, but I like it, so she's powering through. The first thing off the bat that I realized from the first episode that I did not put in is when she was in school, there was this weird sequence where a boy in her class had like a bracelet on, and the bracelet was reflecting a bunch of light in her face, and it was kind of strange, so I kind of just like let it be. When I rewatched it, it actually looked like he was like twitching, like he was starting to show the symptoms from it. He wasn't flicking a pencil or anything, which was a cool detail that I missed on the first round, so there's a little added. Also, there was a theory from a TikTok that I saw. I wish I remembered what the creator's name was, and if someone knows the creator, please put them in the comments, because they kind of put this all together. From the get-go, Jakarta, they believed, was where it started, and this episode 2, Infected, actually confirmed it, which is insane that a TikTok was fully correct. So essentially, this episode started back in 2003, September 23rd, and it was in Jakarta. We were introduced to a professor of mycology, which has to do with everything that is fungus. She was brought in by the Jakarta government to pretty much break down what her findings were with a certain specimen. After she found the individual had been infected, had bit 3 or 4 other individuals, and all those people had been killed, as well as the subject that she was working with. They suspected that about 14 individuals were missing from the place that woman worked. Now, that woman worked at a flower distribution center, and the lady, the professor, actually says that's the most ideal substrate. So if you go back to episode 1, this is really cool, and it's something that the game couldn't put forward in this manner, which is more fantastic about the writing with it. In the first episode, when they first wake up, Joel has forgotten to get pancake mix, which has flour as one of the main ingredients. So no pancakes for any of those 3. Then when they go outside to leave, while Joel and Tommy are going to be going to work, the neighbors offer them biscuits, and they don't take it. Now, those neighbors are the same ones that attacked first and attacked Sarah when she went into the house. Now, it was the grandma first, but she was being fed first, and then the guy was going to feed himself after, which was really cool detail. There was also the fact that when she went back to those neighbors later in the day, they were baking cookies, but she never had any of the cookies. And it was never even shown that she ate any of the cookies. Then at the very end, when Joel finally gets back at like 10 o'clock, he hadn't gotten cake, and cake has flour in it. Now, some of you may think that's a stretch, grasping at straws, but the fact that this episode literally says flour was a great substrate, that it started in a flour company, the distribution centers and everything, that's what's crazy. So there is a idea that it was using the flour in baked goods as well as other things to host and migrate to other individuals, as well as spreading from the topical form as biting or as directly infecting. Continuing on from there, the professor sits down with one of the Jakarta police officers and pretty much explains she does not believe that there is any way to fight this. There's no cure, there's no vaccine. That is what she says right off the bat. And she tells him she recommends bombing the city, and wants to go back to be with her family in the end. That set a tone for the rest of the episode. It also gave a little more hint to some of the next sequences that happen. Ellie finally tells them all about the Firefly base. There's a Firefly base in the west somewheres that has doctors that are working on a cure. that is what the goal of this Firefly squad is, to get Ellie all the way across to the west. If you're following with the game, there's only a couple of things that are actually changed, and I'll go over those at the very end, but I'm going to do a full breakdown of what the actual episode had, so this is going to be heavy spoilers from here on out. Ellie previously had been tagged with one of their test guns, and essentially they all found out that she was infected. She showed them the scar that was on her wrist, and nothing happened from there. They monitored her for a night. There's some back and forth between Joel and Tess. Joel is really apprehensive to do any of this. He wants to head back. He wants to drop her back off to Marlene and not deal with this, but Tess really wants to push. The director at the very end kind of talked about Tess being one of the like hardcore survivalist type of people, that she didn't believe there was hope, and when she actually saw what was going on with Ellie, that's where it sparked. Like, that's where her character arc kind of flipped a switch and felt like she could atone for some of the things that she had done. At the end of each episode, they have like a behind the scenes that talks to the directors about what goes on. Highly recommend watching that if you are keeping up to date. Don't cut off early. Go all the way to the end, because it's really cool to get their perspective on the rest of what this goes on. So as they kind of continue through, there's a couple of instances, and this is where the bombing comes in. The city looks demolished. There's essentially an entire skyscraper leaning up against another skyscraper. All of its interior components are in the middle and built up like a whole barricade, so there wasn't any way to get through. So they as they're walking, Ellie looks to one of like these big huge caverns, and she's like, so this is where they bombed. And essentially they explained, yes, there was, all the major cities were bombed as quickly as possible so they could stop the spread as fast as possible, which was pretty crazy. Another thing with this is Ellie has kind of become the comic relief, which is a little odd. It's something that I just have to get used to. In the game, there was definitely back and forth between Joel, and Joel warmed up as the game went. I'm anticipating that Joel is going to warm up. We definitely see a different Joel from the beginning of this episode to the end of the episode, for very obvious reasons, which I'll go more in depth on. But there is a growing chemistry between Ellie and Joel and Tess. Ellie has never been outside of the quarantine zone, and it's actually, they talk about how she was bit. I can't remember what exactly goes on. There's a split off game between Ellie and then a girl named Riley. I can't remember the specifics, but I believe it has to do with them going into the quarantine zone mall, which is the mall that's in the quarantine zone that's all boarded up. They go in there because she's asked about it by Tess. Like, how did you get the scars? Obviously, Joker reference. But she asks how she got bitten, and Ellie essentially says, oh, well, I went into the mall in the quarantine zone. And they were like, oh, the one that's all boarded up that no one's allowed to go in? She's like, yeah, I broke in. And Tess was like, you went alone? There was a pause, and then she said, yeah. So I think that was her and Riley, because Riley is also mentioned at the very, very first episode by Marlene, and it definitely shows that there is some type of tension between what happened with Riley and Ellie. I don't remember that part of the game. I only played a little bit of that. It was like the prologue, so don't quote me on that, but I think there's more that will go in depth. I think we might see an episode from it. I definitely don't think we'll see like an entire series or anything, but we might see like an episode where it jumps back and shows some of that, which would be cool, because more character arc for these characters, the more we're able to connect with them, is really good. We learn a little bit more about Tess. Tess is from Detroit, Michigan, which, hey, shout out. I'm from Michigan, so close enough. While they're in the quarantine zone, they get to this really nice hotel, and Ellie, since she's never been out of the quarantine zone, she is responding to all of this like a child in a candy store. She's seeing everything for the first time. She's being responsive. She's like fantasizing almost how life would have been, because she wasn't even born when everything happened. And there's a tiny, tiny hint of a smile from Tess when they're in the hotel. It gets stopped pretty quick from some creepy stuff, but it's pretty good. The hotel gets all screwed up. As they go forward, they see an entire slew of infected, hundreds of them. that are all on the ground right where they were actually wanting to move. What's strange though is there's parts of the sunlight that are coming in and you're seeing like the clouds rolling, and so sun rays actually hitting down. They were super responsive to the sunlight. I don't necessarily remember that from the game. I don't think it was something that they harbored on too much, but I know fungus usually thrive in darkness and underground. That's where a majority of it is. Seeing that sensitivity to sunlight was really refreshing, and that might have a little bit more to do. We finally get our first look at clickers as well. And with that big group that was prior, Tess goes in depth on how they're all connected through like a hive mind. That essentially, like somebody a mile away, some of the fungus can respond to another part of the fungus a mile away. Which is insane. It's correct. That's what fungus can do. And the director and the writer both pretty much studied mycology when it comes to this individual type of fungus. So it really good details on the director and writer's part. That's very much appreciated for someone that's a fan of the games as well as this. And they did change some things. So it cannot be dispersed in like floating spores anymore. The director and the writer at the end of the episode talked about how in a video game you can centralize spores, but it's not realistic when you're talking about a show. So I'm wondering if when they go underground, when we first see them go underground at the very front, in the first episode, they go in underground in the quarantine zone and they only see one clicker that's against a wall and it has exploded. I would have expected spores to be there, but they didn't even worry about that. So I don't believe that it's airborne, but there's more to come. They interact with their first clicker. Whole bunch of craziness happens and the clickers look phenomenal. They are spot on, game accurate. Nothing like I couldn't even say anything to have them change. The only thing that I thought was a little weird was the museum that they go into looked really fake. Like the outside looked very fake. It had a lot of the spores and a lot of the fungus growing up it. Joel tested it and the fungus was dead, so maybe that's why. But at the same time, it did look a little cheesy and a little hokey. And that just will come with the, like, trying to put something that was animated in a video game into real life. Making a building look that way, I can understand that there might be some variation in its realistic photorealism, at least. They finally get to the State House, which is the rendezvous that they were supposed to meet with the Fireflies and hand off Ellie to. As they get there, well, stuff had hit the fan. Joel suspects that some of the individuals got infected. The infected fought the non-infected, and nobody won, which was kind of crazy to me. It was just like, there's not even a single survivor. However, a single survivor might have ran or left. Major spoilers here. When they get in, it is found out that when they were in the museum, Tess did get infected, and she got bit. You see very quickly a whole shift in Joel's mood. Joel, through this whole game and series, deals with everything. Trauma, past trauma, current trauma. He's a beast that he gets through it consistently. His character arc is so dreadful, but it's so well done and so well written that I can't even say anything about it. Pedro Pascal does a fantastic job in the sense that you can see this hardened person trying as hard as possible not to show emotion, but still shows it. Like, it's really good. And I could tell the entire time that it was almost his brain was in a state of denial, but it in the forefront was telling, you have to be strong, you have to power through this. This is something that happens. This is the world. This is what we live with. And Tess gets into a moment where she's able to essentially help the entire group. One of the Fireflies was still infected and woke up. Joel shot it straight in the head, went down quick, and you see that the fungus grows over its fingers, and then you see a jump cut, and it's growing over the fingers of all of the other ones that they had seen in their path before. So now hundreds of the clickers and hundreds of the infected are running towards the State House. In a last-ditch effort to atone for her sins, she knows she's not going to last long. Tess dumps a ton of these canisters that were brought in by the Fireflies, full of oil, throws out a ton of grenades, clicks a lighter, drops it, blows the State House to Kingdom Come. You see Ellie and Joel outside, Ellie starting to tear up, and at some point I saw Joel crying. I can't specifically remember it because it was so brief. The director hired people that played the game to play the clickers because they knew how the clickers moved. This is the most fanfare-made show that I think has come out. A lot of people had hopes for Halo. That tapered so fast because of some terrible trailers that came out and a lot of misses. But this, for me personally, I have not seen a show that is so directly connected to a game, almost scene for certain things. They did switch up some things on purpose. The big thing is in the game, they're fighting Fedra when they're running. And the directors even said that they changed that because they wanted it to feel more terrifying. Like the idea that they killed one clicker or one infected, and just that little bit of fungus woke up all of the other ones, to pay homage to what Tess had said prior. The foreshadow they're putting into all the episodes is very in-depth, it's connected, and it's intentional, and I like that. It helps me connect more. And it's also good because when I rewatch certain things, I'll see it again. Like I'll kind of connect, like, okay, this was a foreshadow that they actually did. Like it's, I don't know, it just makes me happy. It genuinely just makes me happy. So all in all, I guess I should start giving ratings to these. So episode 1, I'm going to give it, just because of the car scene, like a solid 9.2. Nah, 9.6. Just because of the car scene. The only reason why these aren't 10s is just because Ellie is still growing on me. She's a little dirtbag, but that's how she kind of was. I just think right now Bella Ramsey is overacting a little, but I think as she comes into the character more, she'll understand it more. And I think also as we see the character grow up a little bit with this whole trek from Maine to the West Coast, then I'll be able to rate it a little bit better. Episode 2, for the connection that I had to the characters, for the story build, for the world building, and for the backstories, for the acting and the chemistry, I'm going to give it like a 9.4. The museum, like I said, looked a little cheesy. I don't know if that was intentional because it was supposed to be like dead fungus. That threw me a little cheesy. Bella Ramsey is kind of being the comic relief. In this state of the world, I'm okay with because it brings a smile to your face. Obviously, you're not going to sit here and like topple over laughing at an instance, but it brings that little bit of lightness to what's going on. The character development that they had with Tess was fantastic. I'm very sad to see her go. I didn't remember how she died in the game. I knew she wasn't at the end, so I didn't know when, but this was a really good exit for her. I felt like a redemption was there. Maybe not all the way through, so again, I get 9.4. That about wraps up all of my opinions on this episode, which was titled Infected. If you guys liked this, please come back and swing around for next week. These are going to be releasing on Mondays consistently until the end of this season. And then after this season, I'm going to be doing a full compilation of my entire thoughts for the series as a whole. I'm contemplating playing the actual game, and if you do think that you'd want to see kind of a playthrough and a walkthrough of the game, let us know. I'll record it and I'll put it down into our channel so that you can have that, and almost to help those who haven't actually played the game, you'll be able to see the resemblance and the connections that are being put forward in the show from the game. Again, thank you all for watching. We appreciate you guys. Drop a like, leave a comment, let us know what you guys felt about the second episode. Besides that, thank you all for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.